Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
All right, here we go, Josh.
All right, so today we're talking about the Banshees of Inisherin. It was written and directed by Martin McDonagh. It's starring Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. They're two lifelong friends in the 1920s, living on an island off the coast of Ireland, and they're having a bit of a row.
Yes, they are.
So you saw this in the theater, right?
I did, yes.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't able to see it in the theater. It was in that weird middle place where it was after it had left the theater, and literally this morning it came out on, as we record, it came out on HBO Max. So I had a weird situation where I had to like watch a movie at 5 a.m. and then go to work for a whole day. So that was interesting, but it was good because I was enthralled throughout the whole film. This is a really good movie, and I'm excited to talk about it with you because there's a lot to talk about, but it was for something that has such a simple premise, I was still really engaged, and a lot of that has to do with the images on screen, the cinematography, the score, and then also the performances and the just like such efficient writing. For me, Steph and I watched Amsterdam over the weekend, and it's the exact opposite of this movie as far as the writing is concerned.
Yeah, I'm afraid of it.
You need to stay away because you like revere David O. Russell.
I like him. I would say
in the pantheon for you.
Well, I mean, he's just produced a couple of movies and directed a couple of movies that I'm enthralled with. I'm not 100%. Okay, that's not true. I would have voted for him for Best Director for Silver Linings Playbook. There's the fact. That's the facts. If that's the barometer, then yes, your statement is true. But I have some issues with him, so I have to be very cautious about. But Amsterdam, I almost started watching it the other day, and I was like, nope, I can't do it. I can just look at the screen images and go, no, I can't do it right now.
Well, you know what? It actually looks great. It looks really good, and I feel really sorry for all of the people involved that weren't the writer, which is David O. Russell, and producers, because it seems like pieces were in place for a really good movie to be made, and it condescends to the audience, and it's kind of infuriating actually, and so it was a frustrating watch, but there were good things, but it was outweighed by the really just horrible writing choices. So anyway, that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a very well-written movie, and Banshees of Inisherin like delivers, and it's so efficient. Steph and I started watching it again with Steph tonight, and just seeing it again so quickly after watching it this morning, and seeing all kinds of little breadcrumbs that are laid that pay off later on. It's so well done. I mean, it's such a tight screenplay. Even though there's a lot of talking in it, it seemed very efficient to me. So what did you think?
I agree with you 100%. I say that a lot, but I do.
Maybe sometimes you agree with me 90%, but it rounds up
92.8%. Okay. Round up 95, and then you round up, right? Okay. So here's what I initially want to say. It's nice to see a movie where the idea is set out. The themes come here and there throughout the film. The motifs are there. The tone of the film is consistent all the way through. And it's a very odd tone in the best sense of the word odd. It's a very unusual tone. And I love that. But how many times do you see a character in a movie that says they're going to do something and they actually do it? So here's what I have to say. Spoilers from this point on. There's no way for me to talk about my feelings of this film without giving too much away initially. So I and you obviously agree, see this film.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max.
Go funny. It has a sophistication to it, but yet it has a very common man feel to it in the best kind of way. It's just the dialect might be harsh on the ear because I still don't know how to say Colin Farrell's name. Patrick.
Oh, I've written it down. Yeah, I mean, Pádraic. It's Pádraic. Even though it's the Irish version of what turned into Patrick. It's Pádraic.
Pádraic.
And
Okay.
it's got a D in it somewhere, but
It's got a D and an I in it, and I'm like, okay, forget it.
No,
but now that you say that, when you see it written, it does look like Patrick. It looks like what could turn into Patrick or what turn. Anyway, Padraig, is that how you say his name?
Pádraic.
See, I can't do it. It's going to take me until the Oscars come out. It's going to take me a while for people to say it. Pádraic. I should be able to say that. Pádraic. Anyway, the point is that it's a movie that says we're going to do this, and it actually does that. All the way down to the hook. The hook is...
It's so good. Ugh.
He says what it is in the beginning of when he discovers it. Barry Keoghan, that is.
Which is hilarious. His line reading in the delivery is perfect.
And I have to stop you because I have to say this. I so wish, but now you know my history, so you can validate this. I wish I had said to you when I said I saw this movie before we decided to talk about it, I wish I had said Barry Keoghan is possibly, more than likely, going to get his Oscar nomination. And then the Golden Globes come out. And
I didn't look.
All 4 of them are nominated.
Wow. Carrie Condon also?
Totally. How could she not?
Yeah, she's great. I haven't seen her in anything.
Fantastic.
But you just got done watching Better Call Saul.
I did. And I don't remember her from that at all.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean,
she's good, I guess. If she can kind of absorb into the
recognize she's the kind of person that I recognize, but I forget the last project I saw her in. And that is, I think, purposeful on some level for me. So I can absorb the character that she's playing at the moment, not thinking about Better Call Saul, because I would have never put the two together.
Well, that's Melissa Leo for me. Like, I can't tell that she was in The Fighter and in, whatever, some Wall Street movie. I can't even remember what it was. Like, Big Short. I think she's in Big Short. So
yeah,
she's in like a bunch of movies and you can't tell.
She's been in a ton of things up to that point too, that, that Frozen River, she was nominated for Best Actress. And you're right. She dissolves. She becomes and dissolves. Sienna Miller, we've talked about her.
Yep. That's right.
So let's put Carrie on the list but I said possibly maybe because I didn't want to commit to it because I hate saying it out loud because then it dissolves in a way. But I originally wanted to tell you Barry Keoghan has put in yet another Oscar nominatable performance. And he is the true definition of supporting actor. He is there for one reason, to support a plot line for Colin Farrell's character, who I'm now scared to say his name. But yeah, so you can tell Martin McDonagh is a theater director and playwright. It felt like a play, but in the best sense. It felt like Saturday matinee, sit back and Once Upon a Time. And all of a sudden you're taken away for 2 hours. And you come out of it going, wait, did that just happen? Did he just do that? Did she? Wait, what? And there are things that happen in this film that, I'll give you an example. Not one person mentions how handsome Colin Farrell is. Not one person. And it's hard pressed not to, because he's a very good looking guy. That said, they didn't feel it necessary to comment on it because he's so absorbed in the character. You buy it. Because if you say the whole premise is you're dull, you spent 2 hours describing your donkey, what it ate and what came out of it, you're dull. Who would have ever put dull and Colin Farrell in the same sentence together? He's just not dull looking. He is a very good looking guy. Anyway, the point to all that is I love seeing cast against type that works. And he really is hunkered down in this character, really is. So I have nothing but great things to say about this film. And I laughed out loud, and I think people think I'm a weirdo. I don't care. I saw things that I think I only saw. I mean, I'm sure they're there, but it's that film. It's just well told, like you were saying.
Yeah, and I think that for me, that's the part that really gets me going, is like I said, the callbacks earlier, or just the fact that how Barry Keoghan describes the hook on a pole. He's like, what would somebody use this for? Hooking something that's a pole lengths away? Like, that's I mean, that's hilarious, but you're kind of you're at the beginning of the movie, you're kind of taking it in. There's a lot of stuff that comes at you very quickly. And I think that even though, we were watching the movie, I was watching the second time with Steph, and we were probably 20 something minutes in, and we still hadn't gotten to the "I will cut my finger off if you talk to me" part, which is kind of the part that really puts stakes on the film, and it still was engaging, but you're still trying to get the lay of the land. And I think that's the you could say that the setting is another character in the film, and I know that's kind of really a hacky thing to say, but it is inherently linked to the relationships between these people in this film, because they grew up with each other, they've been around each other all their lives, and ostensibly they will be around each other for the rest of their lives. And the instigating element of the film, when Colm decides to not talk to Pádraic anymore, and it kind of ripples through the town. Different people take it in different ways, whether it's the priest that comes into town once a week, or whether it's the public house owner, or whether it's the sister. They take it in different ways, and it ends up causing multiple people to reevaluate certain things, whether it's the Barry Keoghan's character, Dom, I think is his name, or the sister especially. You can see how that there's scenes even between her and her and Colm, where he's kind of like, it's funny, he kind of plants a flag in the ground and says, like, I'm better than this place, I'm better than these people, and he decides, or he tries to move forward and move on from his setting, and that ends up kind of instigating feelings and pushing Pádraic's sister, Siobhan, into what she ends up doing. I guess we're in spoilers right now, but
I said it already, because
that pushes
I know
her
me
to leave. And I think that it's funny, because you start weighing all of the motivations of each of the characters and figuring out, like, who got out of this relatively unscathed. And she's really the only one who did, and she's the one who I think is actually better for it than the rest of the family. And it's obviously affecting Pádraic at the end of the film, and Colm is still trapped in whatever he was in at the beginning. He's just, there's so many parallels to this. We can start talking about, like, different themes. I think it was purposeful that Martin McDonagh set this at like during the Civil War, during the Irish Civil War, and that they had a certain amount of remove. There's also a reason why it's on an island, and not like a small island, and not on the Irish mainland. And so, which I guess Ireland is a island anyway, but it's on a smaller island than Ireland. But so it's got a sense of remove. And even in the film, he kind of says, like, I don't know what you guys are fighting about, but I hope you're doing okay over there. And so and they even talk about later on in the film, just kind of like the banality of war, and it's kind of like, there's a line in there, and I think Dom even says it, but it's, or maybe it's Pádraic, but either way, somebody in the film says, it was so much easier when we were fighting against the British, because we were all on the same team. And it's like, oh, that's all figured out, and now we're fighting against each other. It's like you keep dividing in half, and there's always going to be the potential for a dividing line. And so that's kind of what this film is. It's a dividing line was put in between Pádraic and Colm, but there didn't need to be a dividing line between them. But Colm felt whatever it was, ennui, middle-aged, what have I done with my life type of questions that he's asking. and he feels like he's running out of time. And so like, how does he deal with that? Well, probably not in the most tactful way, and definitely not in the nicest way, but he trudges forward no matter what. So,
Committed 100% to what he says.
and I think a lot of that, part of that to me is like, and I wouldn't consider myself an artist in the quote. I'm using the quotation marks with artist, with the word artist, and I think that there's some sort of like a tortured artist trope, or some sort of like, I can't create unless I'm feeling pain type of a thing. And I think you could extrapolate that in this sense, where he's like, I haven't made anything beautiful. I haven't made anything of worth. You know, maybe if I have something to fight against. What happens when you cut off your index finger? Well, it's a lot harder to play the fiddle. It's one of those things where, you know, Beethoven could barely hear by the end of his life, but he was still composing music, and he was composing music differently than when he could actually hear fully. And all of these things, there's bands that take strings out of their guitars and it makes their sound different. Just the fact of a drummer not having a full drum set. If a drummer just has a hi-hat, a snare, and a bass drum, it's going to sound totally different than if they have a full kit with ride cymbal and crash cymbal, and you're having to like extract more out of the elements that you have in front of you instead of just surrounding yourself with as many elements as possible. So I understand the wanting to, the striving for difficulty and seeing what that is going to expose in your art. But at the same time, he's being a freaking jerk to his best friend. So how do you balance all that?
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify something from my point of view. I don't think, well, okay, from my perspective, I have never wanted tragedy in my life to be a better artist. Tragedy and life happens. Drama and conflicts happen. And I think artists are just in tuned differently to those conflicts, that drama. And for whatever reason, the higher you are in your art form, the more tragic your life outside of that art form seems to be. Not everybody, but most people. I've used this example before. I'm not sure if I've used it before on the podcast. Patti LaBelle, the singer. Mm-hmm. All four of her sisters died before the age of 40. And she went on tour, and I think the last sister who was alive had called her when she got off tour and said, Patty's now famous for like her cookbook and stuff. And she's been famous in her family for like her egg sandwich, whatever that is. And she does like her own mayonnaises and all this other stuff. And it was kind of funny watching Oprah and her talk about that, because, you know, Oprah's all about watching, you know, the weight and the calories and stuff. And she's just dumping in the mayonnaise. And she's like, this isn't the Oprah show. This is the Patty show. Anyway, the point to that is that her sister called her and said, I'd like one of your egg sandwiches. I'm tired. I'm not coming over. I'll come over in 3 days. Well, her sister died in the meantime. The last sister that she has died before 40, and she could have made her last days a little bit better because of an egg sandwich, but she didn't, because her life was her life at the time. And so I sometimes think to myself, would Patti LaBelle trade everything that she is, all the success, all the money, all of the fame, the talent, to get her four sisters back? And obviously the answer is probably yes. But it seems to be that people who reach a certain level, the high level, have these horrible personal tragedies in their life that I wouldn't wish upon my enemy. Mostly. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. They
Which
can
enemy
see.
are we talking about here?
I know. I'm like, they can see me now. Ooh, I can't hide my facial expressions anymore. I'm kidding. Anyway, the point is that maybe you're right that he needed to have conflict in his life in order to create art. I got the impression that he just was tired of his friend, and he didn't have time for that anymore because he wasted time, and he wanted to focus on his music. The irony is, look at all the conflict he caused by doing that. And how much time did he waste focused on that anyway throughout the process of the film? Quite a bit. So it's contradictory to what. And also, real quick, before I forget about it, I think the war and setting it at that time, what was it, 1920?
23.
Yeah, okay. Shows how two people are in conflict over something as silly as boredom, or just I'm done with you as a friend, and that causes this conflict, which has all these ramifications. You know, what does war do? Why does war even exist? Why does some conflict become that huge? And the irony is, I think in the film somewhere they said, "Oh, this will be over with soon."
Yeah.
They're gonna.
Well, that was technically true. It was the Civil War was over soon, but the IRA was formed after the Civil War.
Right.
And then that, I think, is also because, I mean, Martin McDonagh lived through the Troubles, the Northern Ireland Troubles, and so
60s to 90s.
Yeah, so that right there is going to be a formative thing. I mean, talk about tragedy. I mean, that's going to be a formative thing in anybody's life who lived there in Northern Ireland and in Ireland during that time. So that right there is definitely something that has ripple effects. And so you're right. I think that setting it in 1923 is saying like, oh, well, this is going to be over soon, but it still had ripple effects. And it affected not only that generation, but the next and the next and the next generation. So yeah, I totally agree. That is completely, right down the line. I think that
and the
right.
Ripple effects of what you were talking about earlier, where everybody is affected by this simple conflict.
And it's also, yeah, you can try to he was trying to remove himself. He was trying to be more insular. He was trying to separate from that portion of society, which was his best friend. But then at the same time, it affected his community. Even though he wasn't trying to do more in his community, he was trying to do less. He was trying to pull away from someone, and it ended up inciting more violence, inciting more issues, in affecting other people. What about that guy who was told by Pádraig that his dad got hit by a bread truck? It's like, well, that's also a hilarious part. He's like, oh my God, I know people get hit by bread trucks. My mom got hit by a bread truck.
Hilarious.
So, but yeah, so that is, those all put together, I think, is you can see the reason why he's setting it in Ireland, the reason why he's using the Irish Civil War, all that. And I think that it's a subtle way of inserting the banality of war into the conversation, and just the fact that you can disagree on something, and whether it's as far as the Troubles are concerned, you're Protestant or Catholic, or whether it's, just very simple. I mean, it's like, it's to the point now, it was to the point there where it wasn't even like a racial thing. You look different than me, therefore I must not like you. It was like, you look exactly like I do, but you go to a different church than I do. Therefore we cannot speak and we are mortal enemy. Like it gets, you start boiling it down. It's just like, this is pointless. And I think that's kind of, he's boiling it down to its most essence, the essence of a person. It's like, it has nothing to do with anything you've done. You literally cannot change anything, and it will not be able to change my view on you. I just don't want to see you anymore. And it's,
which is essentially how you just described what was happening in the Civil War. That's exactly what, and also the fact that their island, it's not finger quotes, it's an island, is separate from the mainland island. And so they feel safe.
They are safer.
Right. Well, safer. Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
they can see the conflict even though they're safe. And so you're exactly right. The conflict, as simple as the conflict between two friends in such a small community, affects everybody.
Yep.
And it's like the, prophet witchy lady, if you will, whatever.
The Banshee?
Well, there you go. The Banshee. That was going to come to me. She's almost like celebrating it. She's almost like, I knew you guys were going to fight one day and I'm here for it. You know, like,
Yeah.
you've
Did you
been
notice she was on the edge of the
Yes.
cliff? I couldn't tell if that was her or not, but I'm pretty sure that was her when Carrie Condon was leaving, when Siobhan
Yes.
was leaving the island.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's called Banshees of Inisherin. So like maybe there's a way that you could extract that out, that they portend violence for that Colin Farrell and that Parik and what's it, Column's violence portends violence of the future generations. I don't know. I mean, that's one read, but then you could also just say that like this is happening, that there's been violence in the past, there will be violence in the future. That is what these are representing. But either way, so
I thought she
sounds
was,
like
when she was on the cliff, it was symbolic of the banshees that called the sailors too close to the rocks, and that's how people would get into accidents or shipwrecked, because the banshees would sing their songs. And
see, I thought it was sirens that did that. Maybe that's
maybe
not,
you're right.
Okay, I don't know.
I try to make that better. I try to make her nice. I try to
Well,
find
I don't
some
know why it's plural. I
redeeming
don't know why it's plural. But then at the same time,
sirens. You're right. You're right.
No, Martin McDonagh has an answer for it, because the column character is like, oh, what are you going to name your piece? Oh, I was thinking about calling it the Banshees of Inisherin. And he's like, oh, why'd you name it that? And he's like, I don't know. I just like the double SH sound. Perfect. You just answered it. It sounds good. The name sounds good.
It's deeper than that, though.
But it doesn't have to be. Like, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. Like,
but in a movie like this, it is. It's textured, and even if it's just because we're reading it into it, it's still, there's although according to what I said earlier, what you see is what you get in this film. So you might be right. It might just be flat out, it sounds good. But I think it's more than that.
Well, you're right. But then it's like it can spin people off in different ways. So if that's what you take from it, great. Martin McDonagh's probably perfectly fine with you taking it that way. But if somebody else is just like, I like that double SH sound in the name of the movie, like he's like, you know what? Perfect. Licorice Pizza. Like, why is that movie called Licorice Pizza? Oh, it's because a record store was named that where Paul Thomas Anderson grew up.
Magnolia.
Well, there's a street called Magnolia. I mean, but it's that kind of stuff where it's just like, it's because he thought it sounded cool, because he wanted to name a movie Licorice Pizza. Fine. It doesn't necessarily take anything away from the film. It can add to the film, but it's not integral to the film. So, I mean, I think he kind of gives himself an out. So that's kind of cool. I like that he's like, it doesn't really matter, but maybe it does. It's up to you guys. So I like that. Yeah, I thought that I talked a little bit about cinematography before, but I got a big Nomadland vibe from this, and like anything that doesn't, like, I felt like there were no practical lights in the film. Like, I felt like I didn't see, I felt like if you panned the camera one way or the other, you wouldn't see big, huge, HMI light, these big, huge lights that we would use to like light a set, off to the side. It's just kind of like, if there's a fire, we're going to use the light from the fire. If it's a sunset, we're going to use the light coming in on the window from the sunset. There was a lot of that. Like, if people are inside, there's a horse outside looking in the window, or Colin Farrell's kind of knocking on the window and seeing if Brendan Gleeson's inside there. And, that kind of stuff. I really loved that, how it felt naturalistic, and it didn't feel like we were on sets. And I don't think they really made any sets. I think it was all practical. There were little things like when they opened up the door to the pub, you would see the sea mist coming in the door as somebody walks out the pub. And it's just like, you can fake that, but my guess is they probably didn't fake that, because all of those buildings were all practical, and they did shoot on small islands off the coast of Ireland and all of that stuff. I did read that they built that pub and it's still standing. They built the Colin Farrell and Carrie Condon's house, the brother and sister's house, and then the house that was Brendan Gleeson's house, they just kind of like shored it up a little bit and made sure that when they literally set it on fire, it didn't damage it. But other than that, like, that was an actual, kind of house on the water right there. So yeah, I mean, it's all kind of practical sets, and I thought that really lended to the reality and the lived in feel of the film, the kind of like dirty, yeah, just kind of grimy feel of the film. So yeah, I appreciated that. And
Well,
like I
you know,
said,
the
yeah,
cinematographer is the same guy as Three Billboards.
I could imagine that it would be.
His name
Yeah.
is Ben Davis, I
Mm-hmm.
believe.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
He
know, that's, yeah, he
quite a few
definitely
movies on
deserves,
his list you would be like, "Oh, yeah."
he deserves props because yeah, that guy, he crushed it. So, I mean, I would be more than excited if he got a nod, an Academy Award nomination for this movie. So, yeah, I thought that it looked better than Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, oh, he did Captain Marvel. That's kind of cool. He's done a lot of
Guardians of the Galaxy.
yeah, Doctor Strange. Yeah, so he's
Yeah.
been in that pipeline, Avengers: Age of Ultron. So yeah, I don't know. It's a different feel than those movies, and I'm sure he had a lot less things to deal with. They didn't have a bunch of like visual effects supervisors like bugging him to whatever, make sure that the light is flat and that they're going to be able to composite in a bunch of fake characters. But yeah, it still looked really good. So there was a lot of use of the F word in this movie.
Is that the F word?
Oh
What
yeah.
it
Oh, yeah.
is? But
Oh,
if
yeah.
we said it right now, it wouldn't be profane, would it?
I mean, I think it all depends on intent.
That's like saying what do they say that's bad in England, but it's no big deal here.
Oh, you're talking about like Fanny?
No, is that bad?
Oh, that's real bad. It's
It
not
is?
bad, but it's a part of a female anatomy in England.
Oh. Yeah, I don't want to know a thing about it.
You might if you start speaking with someone who's from England.
Yeah, I just won't say anything. What? I can't think of it right now. I can't think of it. I mean, they're profane in England. Some of the
Well,
words that they
use
just
certain
use
words
as
that
a
we don't. Yeah, they use certain words that we don't
as
word
regular
like
language.
a word that starts with a C that is
Yeah,
like
they just
ooh,
boop, boop,
strict
boop. They just-
verboten. Yeah.
all of it to each other's mothers, daughters, kids. You know, yeah.
Okay, the way you feel about somebody from the United Kingdom using that word is the way they would feel if you said Fanny.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So
I mean,
weird.
yeah, that's just how it is.
So if we were to say their version of the F word, that would be a cuss word. And if we were being edited for cuss words, it would be edited out of our.
I mean, I would edit it out, but that's just me being.
I'm saying that would it be
overly-
edited out of like a American radio station trailer, like if they were playing it?
Probably, yeah, I would think so because I think it's the intent of the word.
Oh,
And,
yeah, there's
and
no
not
doubt about it.
necessarily. Yeah, you're not faking anybody out by replacing a U with an E.
I like the way it sounds, though. I do want to say it. I said it a lot leaving the theater because I was like, and they say it all the time. They say it so much.
I told Steph when we were watching it, I was like, I think this movie has more F words than Pulp Fiction does.
I was going to say, I think he's giving Martin Scorsese's Wolf of Wall Street a run for his money.
There's no way. No movie can ever have as many F words as Wolf of Wall Street.
And
It's got like 400.
needed to have all 400 of them.
It was, yeah, I agree.
I love everything about it. Okay, because I was afraid to say it because I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to say it because I didn't want you to do that thing that you do whenever I say anything that you're going to have to edit out. But yeah, they do use it a lot. Use a lot. Let's go back to a couple of things really quick. It's one of those films that do you really need to have a conversation with somebody about it? When you see it, it's all encompassing from beginning, middle, and end, and then you're done. It's fun to talk about it, no doubt about it, but there's not this need. I didn't feel a need to reach out and say, hey, let's talk about this.
But did you feel
you need to
like-
see this? You know,
Well-
I did feel that. But
Did,
what were you going
did
to
you
say?
feel like you landed completely on one side or the other?
Meaning of the two?
Yeah, are you team Colin Farrell or team Brendan Gleeson? You're
Why
an
would you-
artist, so
Right.
so you're, but also like Brendan Gleeson. So he's feeling the weight of mortality at the beginning of this film, and he needs a change.
Gray hair.
There you go. Gray hair.
I am too.
Yeah.
Yes.
He even says, yeah, okay, so we're going to do this, and then 12 years later, I'm going to die. What do I have to show for myself? Do you sympathize with that, or do you have any kind of like or empathize with that even?
There's not one molecule in my body that would understand just stopping talking to a friend of mine that I basically have had in my life my whole entire existence. For me, that is my existence. For me, that is my legacy. For me, that is whether or not 1,000 people know who I am versus 10. 5 of those 10 have been in my life for as long as you've been alive. So I could never understand it to where you would just go, no, I'm done with you. I don't have time. I'm bored with how boring you are. And
people do it all the time.
I'm not saying they
nowadays.
don't. But you asked me what side do I fall on, and there's no way I can calculate that because I can't possibly understand doing that because that is my life. They do define me on some level and vice versa. Without them, my life doesn't have as much meaning, if at all any. So I can't now, if you're talking about separating me as a person to the 2 characters on film, I still can't see it because you've spent your whole entire life with this guy and he's been boring from the moment they mention it 1,000 times how boring and dull he is. Well, even the sister is like, yeah, of course he's dull, but I would never, that's not a reason. He's always been dull. What's the deal? And even Barry Keoghan, who is considered the most immature person in the film, says it. What is he, 12? Or what is he, 11? He all of a sudden just woke up and decided he didn't want to talk to you anymore. Even the most, and I'm put this in a gentle way, the most innocent, simple-minded person or at least presented as simple-minded, although when he gives that speech to her, it's heartbreaking how much he's in tune with who he really is.
Yeah, and the Dom character. Yeah,
it's so heartbreaking because
he's so self-aware.
Yeah, and instead of believing it's because he is, I hate
they
using
call
the
him
word.
dim.
I was going to say dim-witted, but I don't like that because they're not. Some of those people, dim-witted people, are the smartest people. They're just slow on their take on something, but when it comes out, they go,
social cues are what they may have difficulty with. The kind of like social norms, whatever you want to call that, they may not be as in tune with, but he
says to her, if you were a little bit younger, if I was a little bit older, we would be together. We could get together. And she's like, I don't think so. And he goes, yeah, you're right. I know. Like he knows that where he is. And it's interesting because the person who knows exactly who they are and where they're at, whether or not they like it or not, is the person who has the most tragic thing happen to him. Overall, if you want to put it on a scale.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's some tragic things that happen. Some self-inflicted and some self-inflicted that caused other trauma, killing a pony and the cutest pony in the world. Let the pony in the house, sis.
It was a donkey.
Donkey. I always want to say pony because it reminds me. Is it a donkey? I thought he says it's not a donkey. It's a pony.
That was at the beginning of the movie. He has a pony and a donkey. But the donkey, he has a miniature donkey that he wants to keep in the house. That's Jenny.
Okay,
yeah.
Right. Okay, right. So back to your original question, Paulrick, right? Is that how you say it? Okay. I'm Team Paulrick. Here's why. Cullum destroys a lifelong friendship over possibly the need to create, possibly the need to not be bored anymore, possibly the need to just be alone, possibly the need to make his mark on life, to have his name remembered like Amadeus, possibly for all of these reasons. Well, he's what? Almost 60 in this film? So the time for that reflection was about 25 years ago. And he should have reflected then. I mean, maybe midlife crises were different. No, they probably would have been earlier because they probably didn't live as long back then.
Yeah.
So he didn't reflect upon it until now. And so everything else that's important, making his mark on music, writing this opus, the Banshees of Inisherin, writing and composing is so much more important than his friendship. And so he doesn't have time for his friendship, but yet that's the only truly meaningful thing that is happening in his life, because other than going to the pub, he goes to church.
Yeah.
What else does he do? There's
Well,
not much else going on. So you need social
Yeah.
interaction as a human being.
Yeah.
So why would you? So you're saying, not you, just anybody is saying, he's willing to sacrifice the one true gift that he has to possibly create something that might be a gift for somebody else or might have his name remembered, when really connections between human beings, online or not everybody can be Amadeus. Not everybody
Exactly.
will be famous. Not everybody will write the happy birthday song.
Yeah,
So
we're getting there. I think he's putting all of those reasons why he hasn't done that yet. He's putting all of those and blaming all of those on Padraig. So,
he thinks, I don't know if he's blaming him. He's thinking the solution is not hanging out with him and cutting him out of his life. And then if Padraig had a defining moment that he could hang that on, that Cullum could say, you did this. This is why I've reflected on this. I didn't like this. So I don't want you in my life, not only because of this, but because I need to do all of this other stuff. It would not have been as interesting of a movie. It'd be too explained. It's not the tone of the film. The fact that there is no other explanation other than I just decided. Because Padraig says to him, you liked me yesterday.
Exactly.
What? And then to do that to a friend and to not have a definition, and then to not, it's not even a one up. It's a threat. If you continue to do this, I'm going to physically harm why I want to be an artist, how I am an artist.
Yeah.
And then he does it.
It's because he knows what's going to happen. He knows that Park's not going to be able to handle it. Like, not going to be able to leave him alone. I think
so. Do you think that Cullum says, subconsciously, he says, well, I'm going to cut my fingers off, and then this will be the reason why I'm not going to be able to create anything?
Well, he can still create. He's still teaching. He's cut off all of his fingers, and he's still teaching.
I don't like him.
So, yeah. Well,
I don't want to hang out with him. I want to hang out with Brendan Gleeson from In Bruges. That's the character I want to hang out. I don't want to hang out with this guy. Well, and that's a compliment, actually.
Yeah.
Like I'm all important enough to, if you want to hang out with me, you're important. That's not the point. The point is that I still followed the path of an extremely unlikable character.
Yeah.
He's extremely unwelcoming as a character, but yet I still had to know what he was going to do. And also the trick, which is really tricky. And I was also mad about it because I was like, how did Martin McDonagh do that to me? You end up understanding why he does what he does and sympathizing with the need to do what he does. And I was like, don't make me sympathize with him. He angers me.
Yeah.
But, it's good to see the two conflicting storylines, not conflicting storylines, but the two contradictive storylines, with the sister getting off the island and succeeding, and Dominic tragically dying and being fished out of the ocean with the
hole that he found at the beginning.
Right, which he's trying to define what you do with it. And that's exactly what you do. Yes. And so it's interesting that the one person who is, well, not the one, there's quite a few, Dominic is not leaving that island ever. Mm-hmm. Everybody else is kind of in question, might somehow take off at some point. So when the sister does it, it's not that much of a surprise on some level, even though most people don't get off. Dominic wants that life. And not that Pádraig and Colm don't, but they're both offered different lives on some level. Because although it's not in the film, I'm sure at some point come off island and teach this music class, blah. I'm sure that's somewhere down in his history. And then, of course, what happens with the sister writing to Pádraig. Dominic never gets that opportunity. And Dominic loves his father, even though his father is a horrible person. Loves his life, even though his life is not, nobody would wish for that, you know? Although Barry Keoghan is a very cool person and his disposition is very cool. So maybe people would be okay with that, but they're not wishing to be that character. No. Not that anybody's wishing to be any of these characters, but no one is going, that's the life I want to live. But yet he should have, by all standards of most movies, should have a nice conclusion to his story. Oh, he's going to get married anyway. Oh, he met this girl. Oh, he's getting off the island. He wrote to Pádraig's sister, and his sister invited me over, even though we're not going to get together. But he should have had a happy ending. And the fact that he has the most tragic ending is brave. And for Martin McDonagh to actually write something like that and stick to it, it's powerful. I think that this is, I don't believe he was, I can't remember if he was nominated for original screenplay for Three Billboards. I know that he won the BAFTA for original screenplay, and it won Best Film and Best Actress at the BAFTAs, but I don't remember if it was nominated for the Oscar. If you're looking it up, that'd be good. But he will definitely be nominated for the Oscar for original screenplay, because I looked up the idea of this film and I thought, is it based on a legend? Is it based on a song? Is it based on the Sirens? Is it based on the Banshees? What is it based on? It's not. It's wholeheartedly original. Yeah. And it is the definition of original screenplay. Have you seen anything like it?
So no, I haven't. And he was nominated for Best Original Screenplay for Three Billboards outside
but did
of
not
Missouri.
win.
And I also just got done listening to, I watched it and listened to interview with, it was the Hollywood Reporter does like writers roundtable, directors roundtable, and they did a writers roundtable with Martin McDonagh, Jordan Peele, the bunch, Tony Kushner, like a bunch of other people on there, and Martin McDonagh. They all kind of the interviewer asked, how do you write? And all of the other directors, Daniel Kwan was in there, from one of the two Daniels from Everything Everywhere All at Once, and all of them, said like, some sort of a ladder outline or, no cards or something. And Martin McDonagh was like, nah, I just kind of like started. He's like, I had the conflict at the beginning between the two characters, and that was it. And he just like wrote it from there. And then they were, all of the other writers, most of them writer-directors, were, well, except for Tony Kushner, they all were just kind of like, they were like reasoning it out like in front of Martin McDonagh and saying like, it does make sense, because like if you can surprise yourself as you're writing, then that it's going to surprise the audience. Whether it's whatever story beats it is, or when the story beats happen, then that's a good notation that's like, oh, this works or this doesn't work, or like, oh, this is stale, this is the easiest way to do it. Maybe I should figure out a different way. And like, oh wow, that's an interesting way to do it. But it's a different kind of a movie. It's not a Knives Out movie. It's not something that is that has a twist at the end or something. It's just a deep character study for complex characters that are not only one thing, and I think that when you start with something like that, then they're right. You can surprise yourself as a writer, and in turn surprise your audience. So it's very well done.
Strangely enough, I think most of those people in that roundtable will be nominated for screenplays this year.
I think they kind of do that.
Yeah, I figured that. As soon as you started listing them, I was like, that's curious, because sometimes they'll throw somebody in there that's just hasn't written in 20 years or hasn't had a movie in whatever. I mean, normally it's current and up to date. But sometimes they'll throw somebody in there just to get their opinion about, oh, I decided to go make commercials instead. That's why I wasn't doing that. But if I was doing that, I would do an outline. It would be something along the lines. So it's going to be interesting. Well, here, I'll go back to what I was saying in the beginning of the film. I love what we do with the podcast. I love talking to you about movies. And I love and get excited about the process of actually speaking about the movie. And I am really jazzed after the podcast. And sometimes I feel like we really tap into some really deep stuff and we really say some stuff that's amazing. And sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what I just said and I'm saying it, and then I'll listen back and I go, oh yeah, that makes way more sense than I expected. And then some stuff will be like, that doesn't make any sense at all. I don't want to negate all of that, but I also have this strange feeling that we didn't need to talk about this movie on any level, that I at least absorbed it and took it in for what it is. And that experience alone was all I needed. I don't need to know if there are songs about these banshees, that they come from the legends, or that there's a civil war in Ireland and that it continued on later on and the IRA came out of it. I don't need to know anything. I just needed to know once upon a time there were two friends. Yeah. One decided one was bored, and that was it. And I was gone for 2 hours. And so I've enjoyed talking with you about it, but I feel like it's such an interestingly complex film, simply complex, that talking about it sort of negates the mystery of it.
It's the feeling dissecting the bird kills the song.
Yeah. See, you do that every time. And then you say one thing, and then I'm like, yeah, stop, cut that all out. Go with what Josh says. Yep, edit that all out. Maybe the ands and the buts, and then go with what Josh says. So when you're editing, do that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I just feel like it's such a special movie, and it looks like they're all going to ride the wave to Oscar nominations, which I think is great because it goes back to our theory about the Oscars, that it's going to bring so many people to this movie. And I can't wait to that, because there's always like us, if you will, and then other people see this film in its time. And then there are people who write about it and people like us who talk about it. And there are people who really enjoy it and everybody's being nominated and everybody's following. So when Oscar time comes and this movie is nominated, it will be nominated all the way down the line. People who wouldn't normally be exposed to it are exposed to it and they go and see it. And there's always these conversations. Did you see this Banshee of the Inisherin film? I don't know why I do a Southern accent, but that's just the way it works. What was that? Their frame of mind is switched into thinking about something that they had no idea that they were going to think about. And I love everything about it. And this movie is going to mess with people's heads because it is just, there's nothing traditional about it. But yet when you look at it on its surface, it's a very traditional setting of what you think of Ireland. By the way, I have a question that has nothing to do with the podcast. Sorry, I had this bug flying around in front of me. Why is it that you see on the coast of Ireland the Dover Cliffs, but that's not the Dover Cliffs, but how come they have those rock formations of all of those patterns that look like farmlands that set out the squares?
I was thinking about that. I think it's just farmland and they may grow different things in each of those.
But you never see any farmers and you never see anything growing. And every film about Ireland, they're there and they look beautiful. And I plan on going to Ireland sometime in the next year or so. So I'll do some investigation. But I'm like, what are
find
those?
A sheep farmer and ask him.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking to anybody. Jeez. I'm afraid that he's going to be like, did you see the movie? I'm going to cut my thumb off. No, it's okay. I'm gone. I'm the dumb American. Bye. But I was just curious if you knew because you have a lot of that information in your brain that it sticks.
No.
Okay. Well, it's a curious question because it's in every.
It looks cool though. Those helicopter shots or drone shots, they look awesome.
I love it. I want to live in one of those squares, but I don't know what they are for, it just, anyway, it's not important. All right. I want to say one last thing before you do the outro. I just want to say thank you for all the hard work that you do on the podcast. It looks fantastic. Last week looks amazing. I was not expecting the single shots of us. It's a little unnerving like there I am and there you are. And
I
then
initially started with it full screen, and then I was like, oh, I'll back it down a little bit.
Yeah, it's a bit. But I love everything that you do, and I don't know if people really know how much work you put into it. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you, because it looks fantastic. It really does look great. The clips look great. The editing is amazing. How you go back and forth to what we're talking about. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that, because it does look really great.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. And then you can catch us on Twitter, maybe, if Twitter's still a thing. It's twitter.com/actorengineer. And we're on YouTube. Just search for us, the Actor and the Engineer podcast, and you'll find us. And we'll see you next time.